Well, hello all and welcome back to the Pipe Cottage. I am suffering from a little bitty cold. Actually, it's more significant than that, and we are trying to get over it. So if I'm hacking and coughing and the voice is a little scratchy, then forgive me. I want to talk to you about two books today that have come into my possession by followers of the Pipe Cottage, and so I thought it would be worthwhile to share these books with you. But first of all, let me show you a little pipe that I got in the mail the other day. This comes from Mark Tinsky. Of course, many of you know that we've been doing a collaboration over the past several months. We've released 3 or 4 pipes, and he sent this to me in the mail the other day as a gift. He said that he has rarely gifted a pipe to anybody over the course of his career. But he sent me this beautiful billiard with some outstanding grain in it. I'm going to get that to focus. If I can get the light on it. Well, maybe it's not going to focus. There we go. Some outstanding grain. And he's got what he calls English vulcanite on the stem. And it's just wonderful. That vulcanite will stand the test of time. Oh, really nice pipe. So I thank Mark Tinsky for sending that my way. I always enjoy his pipes, and we'll have more Pipe Cottage collaboration with Mark Tinsky this year. I told him, I said, what I want to do is just do 4 pipes this year, seasonal. We'll do a spring, summer, fall, and Christmas, and I think that's enough. So the first book that I want to tell you about was written by Connor M. Martel. I think that's how it's pronounced. And this book, you can get it from Barnes & Noble. He sent me this book. He's a fairly young man. I think he's probably in his 20s. And he actually references the Pipe Cottage brand in this book, so I was pleased to see that. It's not an academic treatise. It's fairly easy to read. And so this is a book that I can recommend to anybody who's interested in pipe smoking, but it's catered towards Christians more or less than anything else. But I'll read to you a couple of paragraphs, and maybe it'll spark some interest. This is not an academic book full of footnotes, but rather following the guidance of the great saint found in the dedication of this book. This book is an attempt to run, jump, and play without sin. A wonderful goal for all of us. In my past life, I was incredibly briefly an economics PhD student, and I worked on dense papers full of footnotes, and I dreamt of writing a very similar book. I started many and finished none. All too often I found that my insight was not that insightful, that I was simply bored by digging up academic resources for the book. However, through it all, I continue to love writing. So I resolved to continue to write something, just not something dull and academic. Instead, I wanted to write something that was so fun for me that I would write it even if no one read it. I resolved to sit down with a great number of cigars and write a book. Through those cigars, this book came to me, and the book will play out as follows. And then it gives you a synopsis of what the various chapters are going to do. I won't go into that, but you can get this book on barnesandnoble.com. They still have copies as far as I can tell. There's a good bit of Tolkien in here, G.K. Chesterton, and so he knows what he's talking about. He's got an excellent discussion on Joseph Pieper's work on leisure, and I wrote an essay about leisure and put it up on Substack several months ago. It's an important topic, and in that word, actually the first video I think I ever did for this channel was about leisure. So I think it's worth your time to pick up this book if you are so inclined. It is a good little read. Probably you can get it done in a week, I would say, if you just only read a few minutes at a time. Now, the second book is one that's a little bit more involved. See, this was published. Now, the book Tobacco Theology I just told you about is a recent publication. This book here was published in 2008 by Theodore King. The War on Smokers and the Rise of the Nanny State. It's got a blurb from Tucker Carlson on the bottom. But that's not the blurb that interests me most. What interests me more is he's got a quote from Walter Williams on the back of the book. Now, for those of you who don't know who Walter Williams was, he passed away in 2020. He was an economics professor, says here at George Mason University. Friends with Thomas Sowell, one of the great economic minds of our time. Walter Williams, if memory serves, wrote the foreword to Tom DeLorenzo's book, The Real Lincoln, which came out, I'm guessing, probably 20 years ago now. And so it's amazing how all this stuff comes full circle. I enjoyed my first bourbon old-fashioned in the company of Tom DeLorenzo at the Francis Marion Hotel in Charleston, South Carolina, many moon ago. And so Tom DeLorenzo's a good man, and Walter Williams is no longer with us, but I never had a chance to meet him. So what is this book about? Well, this author sent me the book. He's a cradle Catholic, been Catholic for a good while, and he wrote me a little note inside the book, which I thought was rather, he gave me joy to read it. I'll just read you one sentence in the letter that he wrote. He said, "I'm sure Flannery O'Connor might have even smiled in heaven when you entered the Catholic Church." Well, I tend to believe that he might be right. At least I hope so. So let me read to you what just the jacket cover says. It just sparks some interest. Since 2002, over 50 nations have passed legislation taxing and restricting the use of tobacco products. Bans started out with private businesses and have extended in some places to people's automobiles and homes. With these regulations on individual decisions comes the alarming phenomenon of the rise of the nanny state. In those places where smoking has been severely hampered, new additional regulations have popped up or are being proposed. From the banishment of trans fats in foods to the spanking of children, government is here to protect you from yourself. If you are a non-smoker or skeptical of my argument, ask yourself this question. Do you believe those who lead these anti-smoking crusades will be content with eliminating tobacco and go back to minding their own business? Or will they go after some of the things you now enjoy because they deem them bad for you? Learn how anti-smoking fanatics use tobacco control as an effective form of social engineering, and see the solutions to putting an end to the nanny state so that smokers and non-smokers can be accommodated in a free society, where it must never be a crime to smoke in a bar, in a car, in the open air, in a restaurant, or at home. So this is an extremely interesting book. I won't go into great detail about all the content and everything, and I'm not sure where you can buy it. I guess you can still buy it, maybe on Amazon or things of that nature. The War on Smokers and the Rise of the Nanny State. And we see that happening all across the board in the United States, and it's even worse in other countries around the world. It's not good to have a government that thinks it knows best about health concerns. And I made a video about health maybe 4 or 5 videos ago. And one of the things I said in that video is that you should be far more concerned about the seed oils and the sugar that you consume every day, not whether you're going to die from secondhand smoke. And this was taught to people for years, and it's still being taught now. I remember in 1997, my grandfather had to undergo open heart surgery. And at the time, they told him, they said, you don't need to eat red meat. You need to have almost all vegetables on your plate. And during that generation, I mean, people were taught from the 1950s on up and through the 90s, and even somewhat today, that margarine is better for you than real butter, that vegetable oil is better for you than animal fat, that it's bad to eat eggs and to consume dairy products. And now what we're seeing is just a massive amount of health problems because of what we eat. I'm far more concerned about that than I am the dangers of pipe smoking. And of course, I haven't had a pipe all week. I haven't had a pipe since the last video I made because we've been dealing with this cold. And so it's never a problem of addiction, being addicted to nicotine or being addicted to tobacco. That's not even the question. The question is, in this particular book, does the government have the right to tell you that you can and cannot smoke tobacco? And the follow-up question to that is, does the government have the authority to regulate everything about the tobacco industry to the extent that it's going to be non-existent if something different doesn't happen? I mean, it's very clear that countries around the world have already been coming up with these laws that stipulate if you're born after a certain date, it will be impossible for you to buy tobacco products by the time you become of age. And so it's very concerning. I mean, but it's a symptom of a much larger problem. The problem is not the government in any of these countries that you want to mention, and even in our own country, different state governments have different laws regarding this material. It's not even a question at the end of the day about whether or not these people have the right to regulate tobacco to this extent. It's a larger question about the intrusion upon the individual liberties of homes and families. I remember in the 1990s when my parents started to homeschool us, my sister and I, there was a major debate in South Carolina about the legality of homeschooling. The state government didn't want it to be illegal. The state government wanted to have control of the education of South Carolina families. And of course now that's not nearly as much of a problem as it was 25, 30 years ago. Now I think in most states across the country you can homeschool if you want to without any type of legal ramification. And that's the way it ought to be regarding most aspects of everyday life. The government should not be involved in hardly any of that. But, you know, that's my opinion, and my opinion is not necessarily new to anybody when it comes to these topics. That's all I want to say. I don't have much voice left to do much more talking. I wanted to remind you, in case you're still interested, that our book club does begin next Monday, January 20th. And I've already been working on the lecture material, and it's an exciting thing. I'm looking forward to it. Got a bunch of people signed up, like I said last week, so I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone that signed up for the book club. And that's what the purpose of the club is to get to know a smaller group of people in a more intimate way, to basically teach, to help people learn American history, just as I would be teaching in the classroom. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has signed up for that. And maybe you can't do it now, but I'm fully intending to do another 5-month session in the second half of the year on a different topic, not the same material. So I'm looking forward to that. Well, that's all I've got. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Alan Harrelson with The Pipe Cottage. Thank you for stopping by.